last week we left off. Okay, so new rising events in the reverse Uno of capturing of the Straits. So that's a talking point we can discuss. We can also discuss immigration, considering the Dignity Act and the SAVE Act. And last time we left off talking about the I call it the online civil war, but it's also related in my head to the future of who wins in American politics and where the right goes. So those are like my three topics of choice. Do y'all want to vote on what you want to talk about?
I don't believe in democracy.
Okay.
I actually suggest that we postpone the discussion on the Iran war because I think it is heavily fact dependent and we don't have the facts. There's a lot that we know, and I think we hopefully will be a lot wiser a week from now. But quite frankly, I feel like I'm forming opinions in darkness right now.
Okay, that's fair.
Considering what we were making like predictions last time we were speaking, does any of you feel vindicated or like you are ready to admit that you're wrong?
It did remind me that I don't think I set a good option. I sent only my realistic option, which is U.S. pulls out early and local powers and take over in the region as Iran reforms the new government, and that could go any direction. So that was my realistic expectation. But optimistic expectation seems more realistic now. So I will put it on the table as well. It's still open to go either direction. But a more optimistic is U.S. manages to negotiate with one faction of the current leadership, people vying for leadership in Iran. They ice out the other members of that leadership, empower the element of the leadership that's more willing to negotiate with them to defeat the rest. They come to power and Iran becomes a U.S. backed regime, and the U.S. gets everything it wants from the conflict.
I will answer in the same way that there's a joke where in the the 20th century, a Chinese scholar was asked for his opinion about the French Revolution, and he said, too early to tell.
Okay.
So I think it's way too early to declare victory, way too early to tell what will happen. The United States has a rich history of declaring victory and mission accomplished, only to find out that weeks, months, or years later, things have not gone nearly as well as people hoped. So maybe I was too optimistic when I said that next week we'll know more, but we can continue to follow the situation.
Next week we'll know that we know nothing. I think it's time to say that the French Revolution was a mistake. I agree that if America could pull defeat out of the jaws of victory in Vietnam or in Afghanistan, that it is definitely too early to say about Iran.
Okay. Dignity Act? A SAVE Act? How do you feel about those?
I feel like I'd really like to learn more.
Okay.
That's when I was a student in university, I heard sometimes, or when I was in university afterwards, you sometimes have lecturers say, I really wanted to learn more about topic A, B, and C, so I decided to teach a course in it. And you learn a lot because you have to prepare everything and be able to answer questions and so on.
In my profession, that's called rubber ducky debugging.
Okay. I don't know if you've heard about it, but there is something called the Dignidad Act, which is Spanish for Dignity Act, because the act, the legislation is brought in Spanish because the people that they want to hear about it are the Spanish people. It's basically
Spain or
the
it's
road
Spanish?
to amnesty.
Well,
Hispanic.
I missed the last one.
The
What's
offshoots
the
of
dignity of
the Spain conqueror. Okay, so the Dignity Act basically just is considered to be a road towards amnesty. It doesn't actually allow amnesty. It allows, I believe, people who immigrated from 2001 and beforehand to stay legally, not become citizens, but to get a legal status and be able to work and contribute, supposedly, and not be able to pull from resources, but to stay legally and pay taxes, basically. This, of course, is got a lot of ramifications that are unenforceable. If someone, say, came into 2020 or 2019 and an immigration officer were to ask him, when did you come? And he says 2021, then the process of litigating that is practically impossible. And as part of the elements of the act suggest that it would be illegal for them to go through that legal process without him awaiting that trial outside of the U.S. So during that time, he would still be in the U.S. So practically speaking, it's basically just amnesty towards all of the migrants, but without citizenship. I don't know if you know about the Dubai citizenship situation. Actually, Omer's sister's brother's sister, so a sister-in-law, she and her husband moved to Dubai and they have a kid there, and they're not citizens, but they're legal residents. And citizens gain a lot of good what's the word I'm looking for? Zchuyot, like a lot of good things from the government. Benefits, yes. Okay,
Benefits
yes.
and
Citizens
rights.
get a lot of
Yeah.
benefits from the government, but it's very difficult to become a citizen. And there was also this Roman citizen versus non-citizen rights. And
Well, yeah.
so I was just wondering about that, as far as like when the U.S. becomes a bigger empire, and is this generally the direction of maybe guarding the citizen? Obviously, Bar mentioned this earlier about it's not about whether or not they're citizens, it's about whether or not they affect voting patterns. But I'm just interested in the ramifications of non-citizen, second-class citizen kind of situation. And what do you think about that, basically?
So I'll start because Barry is still muted. First of all, in the United States right now, citizenship gives you the right to vote and very few other things. If you call it a right to serve on juries, and there might be security-related, being able to get security clearance to work in certain positions that require citizenship. But in most ways, there is very little difference between a citizen and a permanent resident, certainly in terms of benefits and so on. So the law would have to change in that way. And I think the situation that you described in Dubai is fairly common in other countries. I think in Switzerland, for instance, it's very difficult to become a citizen. And certainly in the Gulf states, where the country has a lot of money and very few citizens, and so it makes sense for them to say, you can come and live here and work, and you'll still probably make more money and pay less taxes than you would wherever you came from, but the very, very rich benefits of being a citizen, that's taken from you. And that is a little, being a citizen is like being a shareholder in this company that has a lot of wealth, and so you don't get to become a shareholder, you don't get to join us because that is just too attractive, right? We sit on that huge pot of gold, and if we allowed everybody to join in, that would be overwhelming. But we are allowing people to come in and work and contribute and so forth, which is fair. And I really like that model.
Okay.
I think if you want to say, when I came to United Kingdom almost exactly 20 years ago, by the way, my passport was stamped with words not entitled to public benefits.
Okay.
Or something like to that effect. And I thought that's very fair. I'm coming to the country, I'm coming to work, I will pay taxes. I don't expect to be eligible for public benefits. And since, like Bar, I don't really believe in democracy, I think it's very fair to say open immigration, you get, after a certain period, you get the benefits of effectively a green card in terms of your ability to come and go and leave the country and come back freely. You have property rights, you can buy a home, you can take any job that is offered to you and so on, but you don't get certain benefits that come from being effectively a shareholder in the corporation that is the state. So I like this solution.
Okay.
I generally agree. I'd like to just add,
the Dignity Act. Could you tell me again what the cutoff date?
I think it's 2021.
amnesty?
Anyone who came in before 2021 basically is legally permitted to stay.
So exclude the Biden
Exactly,
years.
yeah.
But anything that was before the Biden years would. Okay.
I'd like to add on with what you said. First of all, I generally agree with everything. The distinction that you were looking for is a citizen versus a civilian. They would say in Starship Troopers, where the character is expected to explain the difference between a citizen and a civilian.
That's
and
a great
of course,
reference.
a citizen bears the responsibility of carrying, like serving in the army or voting or things like that. And obviously, it's a big difference of honor for people who are members. I don't support welfare, but I do support honor. I also think that it's a very good solution to the Israeli-Palestinian problem. I think that the big problem with Israel annexing the territories is that it would completely ruin the voting public. And if the Arabs would just be civilians and not citizens, that would solve that problem handily. Unfortunately, that whole thing was really sullied with the whole apartheid claim. Hopefully that blows over soon when the zeitgeist moves on.
That's actually fairly possible that it would blow over. Attention spans are getting shorter. But
I really like. This is going to be a very boring session because we're going to agree on so much. My favorite solution to the Israeli-Palestinian problem is very much along those lines. It's along the lines of the European Union. If you are a Frenchman, you can move and live in Germany, and you can work there and live there, but you cannot vote in German elections. And what my favorite solution is to have a Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza, have Israel in its current border, but have an EU-like arrangement that allows people to move freely and work freely, but you only get to vote in your own country. And that solves the problem, as you said, of a non-Jewish majority taking over, because Israel will still be its own state, but it will allow Jews to live in Hebron if they feel strongly about that, or Arabs moving back to Ashkelon or Ashdod, where their grandparents used to live, if they feel strongly about that. So I think it gives both sides what is the most important to them, while also retaining, I think a Jewish state is emotionally very important to a lot of people, and that sort of keeps that in place as well.
that's why your voice is
And
cracking so
let
much.
me spice up your episode a little bit, because I think that you're wrong. I think what's important to the Arabs is not that they can go back to where they live. I think that's what's important to them is showing dominance over the Jews. Feel free to disagree.
Okay.
Excellent. I disagree.
Okay, that was nice and easy. Okay, there's a lot of threads I actually wanna that of points of interest that came up to me when you guys were giving your sides on the issue. I will just say that part of the reason why it's problematic in the U.S. is culturally it's just not acceptable to have the concept of a second-class resident, non-citizen. I think it just brings up a lot of alarm bells amongst Americans who have maybe too much of an obsession over, definitely an obsession over equality. I just wonder if it's okay. They have too much of an obsession over equality, and they don't take into account enough personal responsibility, which is related to honor is just not as high a value of a thing to make it worth it to become a citizen like in Starship Troopers.
I just want to note that that's exactly the attitude that would keep you from being a citizen.
Okay.
No, I want to stop you right there because there is a quick solution to that. Citizenship could be granted automatically if you own property, as it used to be in America.
Okay. I do think I actually like the model of the voting age being above 25 or even 30 and being restricted to per household and being restricted to landowners. I like as many restrictions to make you more have skin in the games as possible. Obviously, part of the reason why that's changed is because young, unmarried, homeless people tend to vote Democrat, and so that's very useful to one of the sides. I do, you know what? Actually, this is a different point, but it is related to another topic I wanted to discuss, which is the future of the Republican Party. What do you think about this concept of icing out the problematic left and then making the Maha the new left? And then all of the so, for instance, the next person to run for Democrats, I don't know if the Democratic Party will allow this, but let's say the next person to run for Democrat is like a Tulsi Gabbard or an RFK Jr. And then, so there's only the Maha right, what would be considered right nowadays, is actually the 90s liberal versus like a JD Vance Rubio.
That you threw a lot of terms that are not as, I don't know, clear to me.
Okay.
It's wishful thinking. Yes, there are a lot of people, Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. I'm thinking about people like Joe Rogan on the one hand and what's his name, Weinstein on the other. People that are inherently liberal in the old sense, so they're not really right wing in a deep way, but have been disgusted by the woke left and are anti-woke. So you have anti-woke left in a sense, and wouldn't it be nice if the Democratic Party was taken over by them and they represented the alternative, so that the political debate would be between Nick Fuentes and Joe Rogan rather than between.
When you say Nick Fuentes versus Joe Rogan, you mean the debate on the left, right?
No, I'm thinking about the. So anyway, agree with you that would be lovely, that these are people that could represent genuine liberal, socially liberal perspectives without being either woke or socialist. I just don't know how you get there.
So I'm wondering if there would be basically a shift of, okay, so because it's such a power struggle game and the average normie person doesn't really have to pick a side, the cultural issues aren't at that level yet, but it is actually, there is a gun on the table and one of the two parties has to grab it, and it is actually a major issue. The more it becomes existential for each side to win, the more people will have to end up choosing sides, and then maybe the debate of who controls the winning side, which will be continue to be the right if the left keeps going more to the fringe, then maybe the primaries, the Republican primaries, might become the new presidential, the true presidentially important race. So if
In the same way that in California the Democratic primaries
exactly
are really the race for governor, I think we are we are beyond peak woke, and I don't think woke is coming back. I think woke is in the past, and in the 28 presidential elections, you'll see Democrats talking about cost of living and socialism, maybe talking about opposing, maybe having sort of still more immigration views than Trump, but still not open borders, and hopefully definitely opposing Trump's military adventurism. But I don't think you're going to see trans rights being in the center again. I think that battle is lost, and we're moving on.
okay,
I'd like to
go ahead.
intervene. I think that you're all very optimistic, and I would really hope that what you're saying is right. But you all ignored the woke right. There is also woke on the right that mentioned it like Nick Fuentes was on the right. I think he implied that Nick Fuentes was on the right. But he actually has the exact same policies as Obama. He's just racist and anti-Semitic. So if you exchange the whites for the Jews, I think that the woke is just as strong as always. It's just split between leftists and like people who can think the Jews are white and people who think the Jews are not white.
So the left also, okay, okay. I think you misunderstood. Okay, I think that the woke isn't going to be put away. It's going to be masked better, definitely. I think Abigail Spanberger is the model of what they want to do for whoever runs next. I think. Have you heard about the? It's just a talking point on the right, but I know you don't listen to as many right podcasts as I do. So have you heard about Abigail Spanberger, the governor of Virginia?
I have not.
Basically, she just ran a very moderate. Sorry, go ahead.
That sounds delicious. But I was hoping that
Okay, yeah. I love Spanbergers. Masubi, actually. Okay. Spanberger, she run as a moderate, but she governs very liberal in the sense of not like she's trying to put in regulation, or at least her party is, and she's very likely to approve everything that they do, of relaxing punishments towards criminals, getting rid of guns, making it ICE unable to arrest immigrants within their state. All the trans stuff, all the classic woke stuff is basically on the docket, and it looks like it's going to be put into fruition. And they made some very, as far as I know, illegal moves to edit the what's it called, when they split the way the state is counted so that they have more governor seats. Yes, okay, so they have a very illegal way of going about gerrymandering, unlike other states who have done it at least within the legal proceedings. So they did it in a very illegal manner, and the courts basically had decided, the local state courts have decided to let it go after the ruling is already done, after the vote is already counted. So it's likely to never be overruled. So I think that's the model of like leftists are gonna pretend to be moderate, then govern from the left. But if that becomes too existential, then it affects people's way of life, and then actually they genuinely do have to get into politics. So I think all of this is just a matter of time of it getting existential and getting worse and worse. What you're suggesting sounds to me like there's a new window of allowable 9 by 10 cards of allowable opinion. Thank you. Yeah, so you're suggesting that the Overton window shifts to Joe Rogan on the left and Nick Fuentes on the supposed right. Now, Bar, I will say that I do think he's on the right. Just because the right and the left have overlapping opinion doesn't mean that they're the same. I do agree that he just wants a strong man, basically.
Which opinion of his is right wing?
He's nationalistic.
He loves Stalin.
Just because he says he loves, he's a troll, bro. He just says he loves Stalin because he wanted to get a rise out of people.
He has a sense of humor that is right wing these days.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Dad.
I'm not familiar with this delicious person, but I have followed Mandani, and I'm not trying to suggest that the 28 Democrats are going to be Republicans. They're definitely still going to be liberal, but they're not going to be woke to the same extent. And by woke, what I'm thinking about are trans and BLM and blaming white people for everything. I think that is dying down. I think the 24 elections were a revolt against woke, and the revolt is over. I think you will see them having a more left-wing attitude towards immigration, towards government intervention, and other issues. So we're not going to agree with them, but I think they're going to be less horrible than they used to be.
And again, subject. I agree with you in your feeling that woke is dead. I think the zeitgeist has kind of moved on. But also, I think that the main bulwark of the left was Donald Trump. Once Donald Trump is out of power for good, then I don't see how who the right can coalesce on to stop the left. And it's funny that you mentioned Mandani as opposed to Spamberger, because it seems to me like they have like opposite kinds of strategy, where Mandani says very radical things and then governs normal left, and then she says very moderate things and then governs normal left. And right now we have this grace period where Trump is in control and we feel like the right has won, but we forget that the left is much better at this than the right.
I will say the institutions are all still left, and so long as the institutions still exist, Cthulhu swims left. So they're slow rolling everything that could destroy the institution, and then they're fast tracking everything that is related to arresting anyone on the right, and then disincentivizing people from being right wing to begin with.
I just wanted to add, because you said Cthulhu swims to the left, and I was thinking exactly that when we were talking about the franchise. The reason that Cthulhu always swims to the left is because once you include a new sector, a new group of people into your coalition, you have their loyalty for a little bit. So if a person comes from the left, says, okay, now we're going to let black people vote, then black people vote for them for a while, and then it tends more and more to there until you get to women, and then everything gets out of control.
Oh, are you about, actually unrelated, but would you support repealing the 19th?
Yes, and recently I was asked about whether I would support taking away the vote from the Jews, and I was offended by that for a moment, but I decided, yes, I would also support that.
I agree.
a related question, actually, that I'm curious about for both of you, and I think you're going to have your views are going to be very interesting, is birthright citizenship. How do you feel about that?
Oh, it should be illegal. I oh, it's this. I'm don't. I feel like it's pulling the ladder up behind me, but I do think that immigration is fine if people are culturally American and are willing to become culturally American when they move. So my loyalty is to America. If Israel and America went to war, I would fight for America. If and I am attempting to become more American rather than to turn the people around me to become more Israeli. Go ahead, Bar.
Mark, that I want to say something. That's cool. Um, okay, so I get the feeling of what you're saying because I was thinking for a while whether or not I'm an anchor baby, technically.
You didn't bring in
think-
the family, so I think you're not. But go ahead.
I think that anchor babies are considered that only if the parents are illegal
Yeah.
in the country. If the parents are there illegally, then I don't have a problem with birthright citizenship. But my main issue is like what Gil said, where I believe that America should be a completely ideological thing. I believe that an American who happened to be born in China should be able to go to America, whereas a communist who happened to be born in America should be able to be expelled into China. And I know that's not a popular opinion, so I think that being against birthright citizenship is a good start.
It's interesting. The two of you are an exception in that, unlike most people for whom birthright citizenship applies, you didn't spend you didn't grow up in America. You were born but didn't grow up in America. The I, the argument for birthright citizenship is that people who grow up in America are likely to be just as American regardless of who their parents were. As Bar just said correctly, there are a lot of native born American, multi generational Americans, Americans born to American citizens, whose views are far more damaging, far more anti American, you would say, than those of children of hardworking Koreans or Mexicans that came to the country. They're Catholic, they believe in a lot of the sort of social conservative views that you share, and they're hardworking, they study hard and want to succeed, as opposed to other people that were born to American citizens whose parents were, whose family was in the country for hundreds of years, but are now have pink hair or blue hair and study in some college and have idiotic views. So being born in America is actually a fairly good it makes you homogeneous with all the other Americans.
I disagree completely. But go ahead.
I'd like to agree with that, but then completely subvert it. Because the reason that me and Gil are so American is because we didn't grow up in America. If we had
Agreed.
grown up in America, I don't want to say that we'd be disgusting leftists, because I have a lot of respect for us. And we are kind of contrarians, but we are libertarians. That's basically what being American is. And it's not a popular view in Israel, but I think that part of what made me so American is people calling me American. When I was a kid, people identified me as the American guy, even though I was there for a very short while. So sometimes it's the contrasts that actually make you what you are. Well, I agree. Again, it's a matter of what you said. The idea is if the person grows up American, they would be more Americanized. But it points out the bigger problem is that Americans aren't being Americanized at the moment.
I agree with that, but also I would say that there's you both are completely autistic and therefore completely discounting ethnic loyalty being a thing that exists and is real. And there is a reason why you attract a certain kind of person with the way America is today. And you didn't attract that kind of person in the beginning when it was a frontier kind of place and you had to build everything and your chances of dying were like 1 in 5 or whatever. And it's just what you're bringing in now are people who are interested in. First of all, when you allow someone who came in illegally to have a child, that creates a certain incentive structure of people who come here illegally to actually achieve their goals, and that's why they're an anchor baby. They give citizenship to the rest of their family because the kid had citizenship from being born here. And the law is clearly against it because it says jurisdiction thereof, and it doesn't apply to people who are not under the jurisdiction of America. But beyond that, it creates the first element of whoever you're incentivizing to come here. The number one characteristic you're filtering for is someone who is willing to break the law and lie. So you're automatically bringing a certain class of people that are just not advantageous for any country.
I'd like to correct for that a little bit because of the cutoff point in 2021. If you came in under Trump, that shows bravery, and I do respect that.
I will grant that.
Okay. I think we had in a preliminary discussion, I said that sometimes people are presented as this is a problem and if you agree that this is the problem, then you must agree that this is the solution and you must support that solution. And I think the problem, Gil, that you describe, or what both of you I think describe, is the drift in the American culture. The drift in American culture away from its libertarian roots, I claim, has very little to do with immigration. Most of the people who vote for Democrats are not recent immigrants or not immigrants at all. B, I think the solution, the correct solution, is therefore to fight the drift. And if we manage to fight the drift in a way that will impact the bulk of the Democratic voters or the woke voters or whatever, then the immigrants will follow along. Then if you want to filter for the right kind of people, then there is a much simpler solution, which is don't give benefits to immigrants. Ideally, don't give benefits to anybody. And then you immediately solve the problem. You just make it so that the people who want to come to the United States are the people who are willing and interested in working hard.
I'd like to correct a little bit of that. It is true that the American spirit was not destroyed by immigration. But the destruction in the American spirit is what is now incentivizing all the immigration. But regardless of that, it is true that the immigrants didn't cause this. But America is an anomaly in human history. If you bring in people who aren't American, they won't maintain what America is. It is true that what America is being subverted regardless. But you definitely can't save it by importing everybody out. I also agree that not giving them benefits and not allowing them to vote will also stop that. I just think that it's very important to stop that, and if I can't do the other things, I'd rather do the one thing that I can do.
Okay. You made a few good points, Bar. First of all, you don't know who's voting and who isn't voting. Nobody does. That system is intentionally corrupt and not being kept track of. So there's just no way of knowing. So suggesting that people who are new immigrants vote less for Democrats than people who are continuous citizens, we just don't know. I would think not, just because, well, forget that point. But there's also the elements of people have, okay, certain cultures are better than other cultures, okay? Some cultures are very high trust, and some cultures are not. And when you immigrate the third world, you create a less high trust society that creates all sorts of civil conflicts. And if you want to avoid that, you have to have at least immigration moratorium. And the left don't want that because not only is the vote affected by it, because also we don't know who votes, but also the people who come in are more low trust people who are willing to create fraud and then give money to the Democratic Party, and that incentivizes the Cthulhuing, the continuation of the movement of the machine, and the machine is left. You can't dismantle the machine so long as the machine keeps getting money. So as long as we all agree that we prefer the endpoints of what the Republican Party does, except for war. I get it, but war is part of the way that the Republican Party can maintain global hegemony and then continues to maintain enough power to feed their side of the machine to dismantle the left machine. You can't dismantle it in one go. Trump has done a lot. He's like the most deregulation president in, I think, ever, basically. He's, I think, getting rid of something like 300 regulation for everyone that's put in. It's actually pretty incredible. And so long as this trend continues, you could actually bring back the destruction of the culture. The destruction of the culture is also because of public schooling and the infiltration of soft power from external forces such as China and the Soviet Union in the past.
If you have enough power to deport people, then surely you have enough power to stop.
It's a completely different power structure, which is why he literally had to create an alternate power structure by giving ICE all the money and all the authority and hiring a lot more people. He's creating an alternative power structure that can fight the existing power structure. The existing power structure is a self-fulfilling system. They hire left and they maintain left, and they slow down any sort of self-destruction that Trump would want to impose on them. And which is why he had to create an alternate army. There are different forces. The government does use force, okay? Just because it uses force doesn't mean it's all like the same team. There are elites fighting for that power within the system.
Yes, but I don't understand why Trump could do that with ICE, but couldn't do that with the Social Security Administration
or the IRS.
Let me explain. For one quick thing, the politics is all about coalition building. Okay, Trump had to partner up with lots of other interest groups to get what he wants to be done. No one on the left would ever cooperate with him, and the people who actually want to defund or stop any welfare programs, they're so few that there is nothing he could achieve with them. He could cooperate with the anti-immigration people because that's a strong enough group for him to get in power. And now that he's in power, that can achieve part of what he wants to achieve.
I will say also that is actually an argument on the right now, that a lot of times they're suggesting that there are factions in the right that think that if you empower the neocons and give them what they want, you can make a coalition with them and then they can give you what you want. And there are other factions that are suggesting that you can't trust the neocons. As soon as you give them the wars, they won't help you with immigration. It's not going to be you rub my back, I rub your back. It's I get what I want first, and then we'll see about what you getting what you want.
Yeah, the argument. I think that I wouldn't partner with the neocons, but the other side is partnering with the fascists, with the Fuenteses. I go with Austin Paget on this one, where the two centers, the classical liberals and the libertarians, should partner with each other and dismiss the edges.
I somewhat agree.
This is getting very tactical, right? and tactical to the degree that I'm not as comfortable expressing an opinion. I think it also gives Trump much too much credit, but that is a separate issue. You're saying really the most important thing is to stop immigration, and in order to stop immigration, it makes sense for Trump to do some radical things and compromise on other things like the war and so on, because the most important thing is to stop the illegal immigration. I think stopping new immigration is obviously the easy thing because Trump has done that.
Yeah.
Difficult part is deportation, right? Deportation is very difficult. Trump hasn't, despite what Trump has done with ICE is make everybody hate ICE. ICE retreated, but in terms of tangible results, in terms of the number of people that were deported, it's a minuscule drop in the ocean.
It went over 2
So
million
Trump-
people deported.
I'd like to correct a few things here. First of all, the ICE
Yep.
thing is important for preventing the new immigrants. So, hidden effects. The important thing is not stopping immigration. The important thing is stopping the leftist takeover for a permanent takeover of the US government. Immigration is just a tool that the left uses to permanently take over the US. If we could stop it by reducing the franchise, I'm sure Trump would do that. But there wasn't a let's reduce the franchise faction. There was a let's prevent immigration faction. And so they're the ones that Trump cooperated with. And Trump isn't really Trump. He's just the friends we made along the way. He's a pinpoint. He is the thing that we all focus our powers into, and he does what the coalition wants, supposedly. He pretends that it's what he wants because what he wants is to be great.
So who is Trump's? So who is really Trump's coalition? Because obviously he lost. He lost Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly.
Never had
and
either Tucker or Joe Rogan, right? Joe Rogan always hated him, didn't want to interview him from the start, and Tucker Carlson was recorded saying how much he hates him and how much he hopes to never talk to him. Never had any of them.
Yet, no, they both lobbied for him. They both helped him get elected in 2024. They both supported him. Certainly, Tucker Carlson was on the stage with him. So, no, while they might have had issues in the past, in 2024, they were both part of his coalition, and it's the coalition that won.
And now
large fractions of this coalition have peeled off and are no longer and are expressing dissatisfaction to the point of saying they recognize that they've made a mistake. So
You're right. They did peel off. It is the breakup of the right. I think it's because they, like you, think the woke is dead. And when the woke comes back 10 times harder, they're going to have to coalesce together again.
Yeah, they were just friends for a shared enemy. And now that the shared enemy is supposedly defeated, they don't need each other anymore.
But so, what are Trump's priorities? Is the war in Iran helping with the immigration issue?
Well, no, the war in Iran is a global power issue. It's not an internal matter.
Okay.
In diaspora, that's the best way to get rid of them is but
Oh,
but we wouldn't want to, but yeah.
there's an element of truth in that. It seems like he wants to basically conquer all the South American nations so that he can give them back to the diaspora in the U.S. It's actually funny. If it works, it's actually a great way to get rid of them. Though they are usually the more productive, the diaspora.
Those are the good ones that you actually don't
Yeah.
want to get rid of. But then you have allies, you have friends in these countries that are trying to cooperate with you. Like if
That's
all
true.
the Cubans leave California, leave Florida, and go back to Cuba, you lose them in Florida, but at least you have like this great ally in Cuba that's going to help you.
I think I understand your reluctance to discuss the tactical, but I think we're all in agreement. 99% of people are in agreement of what want society to look like. It's not even that's never the argument. It's always the argument of how do you get there. And I think there's a lot of hand wringing about supposedly immoral things like the war with Iran. Though I don't know if killing the leaders of Iran is so immoral. But yeah, if it was citizenry, maybe then it would be more a serious argument. But it's mostly the leadership and the military. But beyond that, it's you just literally. This is what my problem with people like Dave Smith. With all he does is complain, and he has no idea how difficult it is to tearing things down is 1,000 times easier than building something up. It's just once something is built, it goes on inertia, so much so that there are like sayings in companies that Google, Apple is gliding on its past success for over 20 years. They're basically they're only successful in administration, and administration is roads built in inertia versus innovation. So there's so much inertia in how everything is run, and everything was swimming left for so many years that it's up to Trump to defeat such an incredible monster. And the only places where he has actually powers to move is external affairs, and that's actually easier. It's actually easier to, you said it was easy to stop immigration. It's actually harder to stop immigration than it is to go to war with Iran. You can tell because if Kamala had won, we'd have gone to war with Iran, but we wouldn't have stopped immigration.
No, that's not about being easier or more difficult. That's about priorities. But so we both agree that Kamala was at least as much of a warmonger as Trump was, but she was for immigration, or at least wasn't sanguine about immigration in a way that Trump wasn't. There's also a matter of priority. In Iran, by the way, over 2,000 people have died. The vast majority of them are not like senior
government
What does vast mean?
officials. Sorry?
Give us percentages. What is
Well, you said vast majority. I find
and
that
2,000
hard to
people
believe.
is not a lot.
Yeah,
In the grand
have you
scheme.
heard of any wars in history where 2,000 people died?
Where are you getting these numbers also?
That's an excellent question. So I'm going to take that back. I know that 150 plus little girls died in the school that the United States would never acknowledge.
No, that's fair. That is tragic.
Because nobody supports that. There is no position that it was good to bomb that.
It is. Those are genuine casualties of war, and it is tragic that casualties of war happen. You could hypothetically.
I'm completely sure that it was America yet. But I do acknowledge that it could be, and I think that everyone agrees that nobody wanted that to happen.
I think it's America because we don't hear about it anymore, basically.
Well, I think that everybody agrees doesn't include anybody speaking for the Trump administration. And the tragedy of war is precisely the reason why war should always be the last resort. And I feel strongly, and I don't know that we can't go into that right now, but I feel strongly that the war in Iran, even if the stated goals were justified, was far from the last resort available.
Wait. Let's stop you right there. Okay. First of all, you said that no one in the Trump administration doesn't want that girls' school bombing. Do you have any doubt in your mind that if Trump could roll the clock back and make that the girls' school bombing didn't happen, he wouldn't? One, of course he would. Of course he would. We all agree that he would. You tell me the moment if you don't, but I don't think that you will. Second, war is the last resort, and that's why Iran should have avoided it, but they did not. They just they kept on with insisting on what they want because they didn't believe that Trump would go through with it. The reason that people like Iran can still be belligerent is because everyone is so crazy afraid of doing war that they think that they can just play chicken with everybody. The point of the war isn't to defeat Iran. The point of the war is to show that when Trump says you do something, then you listen.
Okay. When you get a chance, listen to yourself again. When I rob you in the back alley, then it's really your fault if you don't give me your wallet and I knock you up. And the point of that is not to
30,000
take
people
the point of that. Hold
before you robbed me?
Bar, just 1 second. And the point of that is not. Listen to what you said. You said the point of the war is to show to the world that the United States, whatever Trump says, is the law, and then it's your fault if Trump starts a war against you because you didn't give in when he threatened you. That's what you said. Isn't that
I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding. I think there's going to be a bully on the world stage.
What he asked for was for them not to develop nuclear weapons. If you're robbing me in the back of the alley and you're saying, listen, I'm going to take your money right now if you don't stop building nuclear weapons, then maybe you can put some of the blame on me.
Okay, I think, of course, he's using power, and you don't like it when people use power and force their will. But I think using power and forcing your will is human, eternal, and I think someone's gonna do it. And I think Trump is more of a trustworthy person to do it than other people, including the leaders of Iran.
The goal of, if you say the goal of the war was to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon, then I would even grant you that. Okay, I would grant the hypocrisy of having Israel have nuclear weapons and the United States using them and Iran not having the right to have them. I will grant
That's
you
not
that.
hypocrisy.
And then I will argue, and we're not going to do that now because we have about 5 minutes before I have to go, but I will argue that Iran has agreed not to have nuclear weapons. What Iran refused to do is it refused to be the only country in the world not entitled to enrich uranium to 3 to 4%, which is what the United States insists on.
And Iran has
agreed, committed itself
actually
in the past with a religious fatwa, which in a country like Iran is very important,
right?
right? But Iran has agreed not to develop nuclear weapons. Iran has agreed not to enrich uranium beyond 3 or 4%.
Right?
Iran agreed to international inspection. And the Trump administration, with the two buffoons that it sent to the negotiations,
know nothing about
nuclear technology,
and
under the obvious influence our glorious leader Benjamin Netanyahu rejected the negotiation
that would have
enabled
keeping
Iran away from getting a nuclear weapon.
And that wasn't just
immoral, it was also stupid because now Iran is much more likely to develop nuclear weapons, if only because the fatwa died with the Ayatollah Khamenei.
Right?
And his fatwa against nuclear weapons is no longer technically in Iran.
So now Iran is very pious and very religious, right? Now we agree that a fatwa, an Islamic commandment to doing something is worth something.
In Iran it is, yes.
Okay, so the fatwa to destroy the entire West and turn everybody Muslim, that's not worth the same thing?
I don't think there is a fatwa.
No, it's not. It's a commandment.
No.
I don't think there is a religious order to do that.
What's jihad?
I think
what
we're
does
talking
jihad
about.
mean?
Sorry?
What does jihad mean?
Jihad
What does Muslims call the part of the world that
holy
isn't
struggle.
Islamic?
Sorry. Bar, you need to mute yourself.
Sorry. Go ahead. Wait.
Okay. Jihad means many different things to different people, but broadly speaking, you can laugh, but it's true, right? Broadly speaking, it means a holy struggle.
Okay.
And you can call it a holy war in the same way that we have war against drugs or war against poverty, right? So you can think about it as a holy war, but in the broad sense of war as an organized struggle to achieve a given goal. That's not the same as a fatwa, right? And we have no problem having very good relations with many countries that are at least as Islamically orthodox as Iran is, because we understand that while Islam can be interpreted as saying very extreme things, it's Muslims in practice are often very pragmatic and you can work with them. Same way that we work with Saudi Arabia from when the 9/11 terrorists
I want to
came.
stop you. I didn't mean to say that Islam is the problem and we can't have peace with Muslims. I just meant to call out the hypocrisy of naming the fatwa as some sort of commitment to not create nuclear weapons, but claiming that they're really swear to destroy Israel and America is not to be taken seriously. And like this pretense that giving up on nuclear enrichment is this huge embarrassment, like it would completely destroy their country, whereas stopping all of the embargoes that are laid on them, not being the global pariah, is worth nothing. Like, that was crazy for us to assume that they could stop enriching uranium. Look at me not enriching uranium right now. I don't want to brag, but it's really easy. I don't think that it's this big deal that you make of it.
Look, they're put in a position where they have to defend themselves. I understand the argument. They're put in a position where they're damned if they do and damned if they don't, and they have to. But I'm saying either way, they're damned. Okay, so they should learn their lesson and stop being damned in the way that it goes against Trump. But I understand human emotion makes it impossible. Not impossible. People are capable of it, but human emotion makes you want to be spiteful in this kind of scenario, and because you're very prideful, you don't want to give up and just call uncle. But at the end of the day, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. So just assuming that they're in the right to continue to follow their pride and not just be willing to play ball, give America what it wants, and be their bitch. And yes, it's shameful to be their bitch. I agree. It's not an ideal position, but you're in that position regardless. You're either, and there's just power on the line for either the BRICS direction or the U.S. direction, and Trump is willing to use hard power. So at this point, you just have to know which side to side with. This is just like the most real politics that there is. It's just, you can't be prideful when your life is on the line. It's unless that's more important than your life, which of course it was, and they died accordingly.
Well, I think you could argue that they have miscalculated, or you can argue that Trump has miscalculated, because as I said very early in this conversation, it's too early to tell where this war is going, and certainly the Iranians, by all accounts, felt that they are winning the war. And a lot of people around the world feel that the Iranians have the upper hand because they have a greater ability to absorb pain, and because they have their hands on the Strait of Hormuz and potentially Bab el-Mandeb as well, with the aid of the Houthis, to completely strangle all the energy and other exports out of the Gulf. So it's entirely unclear how this ends, and it's entirely unclear that the Iranians made the wrong choice in not capitulating to the United States. But even if they did make the wrong choice, that doesn't make what America did honorable or moral or even wise, because America stands to lose more than just the billions and billions of dollars that the war has already cost the United States.
The
The
United
United
States
States is presenting itself as a bully, and nobody likes bullies. And at some point, that comes back to to bite you. If all you do is throw your weight around and saying, I'm the biggest badass around, and you all better do exactly as I say, or else I'm going to punch you, then at some point you're going to lose all your friends and people will join forces together to counter you. So I think long term, it's not just an immoral policy by Trump. I think it's an unwise and imprudent policy because it extends beyond just Iran. He did that in Venezuela. He's talked about doing that in Greenland. People are thinking that he might do that with Cuba as well. So it becomes a pattern where it's not just to stop countries from having nuclear weapons and destroy the West, which they never could and never said, but also it becomes a pattern where the United States is this country that uses military force to enforce its will around the world, and people don't like that. And the United States is not all powerful, right? The United States cannot defeat China, for instance, and at some point, I think it's going to come back and bite the United States.
I think there's a misunderstanding about how power works. It's not that they weren't the bully before, and it's not that they didn't exert power before. It's that Trump is more direct about it, and there are certain temperaments of people who are fox-like and who prefer that style of rule. I like the saying it out in the open. We always had the power. The U.S. always had the power. It's just now it's in the open, and it's not being ashamed of it and being subversive and selling your reggae communism all over the world. It's basically just give me money and I'll continue to not hurt you.
Yeah,
Because it's true. I agree with Gil. I think it's they've always exerted all the power on the entire world. They have been the global hegemon for our last seculum. It's just honest right now, which is nice. And I think that it confused you as to not understand the balance of power in the world. The Chinese technologies has been what has supported Iran. It's all their intelligence about how much Israel is hurt, and look what it brought them. It brought them nothing. It is absolutely, it is laughable compared to American and even Israeli technology. Strait of Hormuz is really important for Europe and for China. America has all the oil they need. Bab el-Mandeb Strait, yeah, it's pretty important for Israel, but Israel now has a stronghold in Somaliland. I really doubt that the Houthis can hold anything back. So, yes, people don't like bullies, but people eventually respect bullies, and hopefully they don't do Maduro or a Khamenei or the Cuba thing, and they learn to respect. Well, we don't like a global hegemon, but the alternative is just so much worse. And we just have to appreciate what America has for now. Once we have established a liberal mindset all over the world, then we can discuss how nobody likes a bully and everybody should respect each other. But there is no equivalence between American liberals who are just admitting that they're the global hegemon versus an Ayatollah who is a replacement for God and holds life or death power over every one of the 90 million citizens and orders women to be raped before they're killed so they don't go into heaven.
okay. I think I have to go on. We started this conversation with a lot of agreement. I probably couldn't disagree more with both of you, but that's something that we'll have to do next week.
Yeah. I do think I will say I don't think it's fair to assume that isn't aware of the realities. It's just I think we're all in agreement. It's just whether or not it's real, how to get there, and how realistic it is, whether or not people will use power if they have power.
My final conclusion is here that just because we highly disagree on facts That's no disrespect. I do think that our currently what shapes our opinions, our bias is more about our sources of information than it is about what information we choose to accept as fact. And I think that we all live in different realities these days depending on our sources. And hopefully we find out soon who was right and who was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, so
okay.
Okay,
We will say goodbye. I just want to say
say
one of my favorite quotes from Ayn
from
Rand was,
um,
"You can,
you can
fight
fight
reality,
reality
and you can
and
escape,
escape
the
its
consequences,
consequences,
but you can't
but you
escape
can't
the
escape the
consequences
consequences
of fighting reality. Of the of, I can't with the echo. Sorry.
Sorry.
So it's
Oh,
confusing.
sorry. There.
Basically, you can fight reality, but you can't. You can escape reality, but you can't escape the consequences of trying to escape reality. So we'll see the consequences
I like
of
that.
trying to escape reality soon.
And I just want to strongly agree with Bar. I think it's going to be fascinating to analyze whether our different whence from come our differences of opinion. Do we have different ultimate values, or do we have differences of opinion about the facts, historic and current, or do we have differences in projecting on the future? So we might agree that the world is exactly in the same. However, I think that if A is done, then the consequences will be one thing, and you might think that the consequences will be different, and that's the most difficult difference to bridge because it's all about hypotheticals. So I think it's actually a fascinating mode of analyzing differences that we might want to explore in the future.
Okay, agreed. Thank you, guys. Well, I guess we'll see you next week.
Next week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.